Tantor Audio presents Lady Protector by L.E. Modesitt, Jr. Narrated by Kyle McCarley. 1. And that I will employ all talent and skills necessary to do so, at all times and in all places, so that peace and prosperity may govern this land and her people. As the words of the ancient oath she had taken as Lady Protector died away, making her the first Lady Protector since Mykell the Great had created the office of Protector of Lanacrona hundreds of years earlier, Mykella stood for a moment looking out across the courtyard of the palace in Tempra. She had almost forgotten the remainder of the investiture ceremony. Almost. With only a slight hesitation, she walked down the steps past the bodies of her immediately deceased Uncle Joramil and Cousin Baronet, their figures sprawled across the stone. Under Commander Eraste followed Mykella closely. On the left side, at the bottom of the 5 low and wide stone steps leading up to the main entry of the palace entry, lay the body of Arms Commander Nefrit, who, less than a fraction of a glass before, had tried to cut her down with his saber. One of the Southern Guards had straightened his form and laid him out on his back, facing the palace. Beyond the body, a Southern Guard stood, holding the reins of the gray stallion that had been Joramil's. Before she mounted the stallion, Mykella turned to Eraste. Have the bodies prepared for a quiet family memorial. There will be no procession and no honors for any of them. She almost added, Traitors do not deserve honors of any sort. She did not. That would have made her look weak before the still assembled Southern Guards. Have someone guide my sisters to the Lady Protector's study and provide a guard. I will see you there. Eraste nodded. Yes, Lady Protector. She could sense a certain amusement behind his words, but also approval. She couldn't help but wonder what she had forgotten. With her talent shield still tight about her, she swept the black cloak back over her shoulders, revealing the brilliant blue vest of the heir and the black night-silk shirt and trousers she almost always wore. Then she mounted, wishing that she were taller and that she didn't have to jump to place her black boot in the stirrup. She wasn't about to ask for a leg up. She never had before, and now that she was the ruler of Lanacrona, she wasn't about to begin. As she turned the stallion toward the east, before riding to the end of the palace, then north and out of sight to the rear courtyard, she used her talent to extend her hearing, trying to pick up any words that might bode ill. Over the sound of hooves on the stone pavement that showed no sign of wear, even after thousands of years, she began to hear murmurs. Rides like a guard. Never thought the daughter. The one Celtier looked to fill his breeches. Had that been Malaric, the envoy from Southgate, or one of the local Celtiers from Tempra? Either way, that suggested problems, not that there wouldn't be scores of them in the days ahead. Her eyes flicked to the massive oblong structure that was the palace. Not for the first time, she wondered what function it had served in the days of the vanished electors who had built it, because the interior was anything but designed for a ruler, even with all the additions, such as the kitchens, made over the years. After she reached the rear courtyard, she turned the stallion toward the middle rear door to the palace. 2 Southern Guards looked blankly from the stallion to her, clearly not expecting the daughter of the former Lord Protector. A few things have changed, she said as she reined up. Lord Joramil was executed for poisoning my father and plotting the death of my brother. So was his son. That left me as Lady Protector, and the Celtiers and the Southern Guards have affirmed my succession." The younger guard swallowed hard. The older and graying guard nodded slowly.
"We have always served your family, lady. We will continue to do so."
Mykella could sense the honesty behind the words. "Thank you." She dismounted gracefully, handed him the reins, stepped back, then turned toward the door. "She'd do that," she heard the younger guard say as she opened the door.
"She was named after Mikel the Great. For good reason, it appears."
As she closed the palace door behind her, she certainly hoped so, but put that thought aside as she hurried along the wide interior corridor, following it west, then south, and finally east to reach the central stone staircase, wide as it was, the only staircase, to the upper level of the palace. At the base of the steps were 2 Southern Guards, both older rankers rather than the interior palace guards she had known. That Erased had made that change did not surprise her, but the speed with which he had acted did. It also pleased her. The one on the left inclined his head.
"Lady Protector?"
Mykella returned the nod and hurried up the stairs. Neither guard spoke again, even after she passed them. Another pair of Southern Guards were stationed at the top. She nodded to both and turned to her left. In moments, she had reached her destination. For just a moment, she hesitated. Was it still Sexty? Her father's memorial ceremony, just yesterday, seemed far longer than a day ago. She straightened and opened the door. Chalmer rose from behind the table desk in the outer anteroom that guarded the entry to the study that had been her father's.
"Lady Protector."
Mykella almost smiled. "Who told you?"
"Under Commander Erased sent a Southern Guard to inform me. He has also placed trusted guards in places in the palace."
"I know." She didn't mention how she'd discovered that. "The commander is quite able and very loyal." She paused and looked at Chalmer. "How did you feel about my father's death and Joramil's efforts to become Lord Protector?"
"I was distressed, lady. I cautioned your father about Lord Joramil once. The second time I brought up the matter, he told me never to mention the subject again if I wanted to remain as his private scrivener."
The gray-haired functionary smiled sadly. Mykella could sense the truth of the older man's feelings. "Then you will serve me as loyally as you did him?"
"If you will have me, Lady Protector."
"I will. But only if you remain honest, and tell me of your misgivings about any action I may take or contemplate." Chalmer bowed deeply.
"That I will, lady."
He straightened.
"Your sister Salia is already awaiting you in the study."
"Do you know where Rachelonna is?"
"She is in her chamber. A pair of Southern Guards are posted there to keep others from intruding. The Undercommander said that she was not to leave the palace without your permission."
"That is correct. Matters need to settle for a time." When Mykella stepped through the inner door, Salia was standing to one side of the desk in the study that had always been that of the Lord Protector of Lanacrona, a study that had become Mykella's as the first Lady Protector of the land. Behind the outward poise of her tall, blonde, and beautiful youngest sister, Mykella could sense confusion, apprehension, and even some fear. Given Salia's expertise and training with weapons, that fear surprised Mykella. "There's no reason for you to worry now," Mykella said. "You can sense that too, can't you? When people are close. With what you did. Why couldn't you save Father?"
Salia's voice was not quite accusatory.
I couldn't learn what I learned fast enough.
Mykella shook her head.
The things I did today. Some of them. Today was the first time I did them, at least in public.
But some of them she'd only tried once before, and all of them, except seeing the soarer, using the table in the depths of the palace's lower levels, and beginning to sense what people felt, she had been forced to learn in order to survive after her father's poisoning by Joramil.
Until I did them today.
She shrugged, a gesture between resignation and helplessness.
You know I tried to caution Father, and warn him. Did you have to kill Baronet? Yes. He was weak, and Chelazar would have manipulated him. She might even have married him. She's that calculating.
Before Mykella could say more, there was a rap on the study door.
Lady Protector, Under Commander Eraste.
Have him come in.
The broad-shouldered and blonde Eraste stepped into the study and immediately bowed.
Lady Protector.
As he straightened, his pale green eyes met those of Mykella. She could sense a firm resolve, as well as concern for her. That boded well, since she'd named him as both arms commander of Lanacrona and her designated heir. She could also sense the thin strand of green amid the golden brown of his unseen life thread, a thread that seemed more vital than that of Salia's, and far more than that of Chalmer, whose thread was almost yellowish-brown, stretching invisibly out to the east. Eraste extended his hand, palm up. In it was a ring, golden, with a large, square-cut emerald set in the middle of the seal of Lanacrona.
This was your father's. The usurper wore it. It is yours now.
Both seeing her father's seal ring and hearing Eraste calling her uncle a usurper jolted Mykella, but she nodded as she took the ring.
Thank you.
Because it was far too large to fit any of her fingers, she slipped it into her belt pouch.
It is yours by right,
Eraste said quietly.
It is the Lady Protector's by right,
Mykella said gently.
Not mine.
Eraste nodded. Mykella sensed his approval of her words, even as she thought for a moment. Although she had planned carefully the steps by which she had removed her uncle Joramil and his son Baronet after their all-too-successful efforts to kill her father and her brother Jeraxilt, she really hadn't planned beyond stopping her uncle from taking control of Lanacrona.
Commander Eraste,
she began, looking into his pale green eyes.
What sort of document or proclamation do we need to confirm you as Arms Commander of Lanacrona?
A simple statement with the Lady Protector's signature and seal, Lady Mykella.
I'll also need your recommendations for the officers to take your place and that of Commander Demel in the Southern Guards.
I would recommend Major Choalt as commander, but he will have to be recalled from Supat. Eraste paused. We should discuss the position of Under-Commander now that Commander Demel has departed.
For the moment, I assume you and other officers you trust can handle the combined duties. Will that be a problem?
No, lady. A faint smile crossed Eraste's lightly tanned face. I will dispatch a courier to recall the Major immediately.
I also need to deal with Chelazar.
Confine her,
suggested Salia. Eraste nodded. Mykella looked to the arms commander.
Would you have a squad escort her here to see me? Can you also spare a squad to keep anyone from removing anything from the villa? It's not personal property, but belongs to the Lord or Lady Protector. Those matters I can and will attend to. Pardoning my forwardness, lady, both would be good ideas. If you would excuse me." Mykella nodded. "If you would keep me informed as to your whereabouts after dealing with Lady Chelazar." "I will do so." Eraste paused. "I'll also have Captain Maeltor report here in case anything else comes up where you may need the Southern Guards." "That would be good." Mykella smiled ruefully. She should have thought of that. At least she'd been intelligent enough to involve Eraste. "You may go." With a nod, the commander departed. His brevity and haste told Mykella she should have thought of putting Chelazar under guard even sooner, but it was less than half a glass after she'd become Lady Protector, and dealing with her late uncle's wife hadn't been her highest priority. She almost shook her head. Now, there could be no excuses. Only mistakes when you fail to act as necessary. Once Eraste had left the study, Mykella turned back to Salia. "I still need to talk to Rachel on her."
"She won't want to talk to you,"
predicted Salia.
"She's convinced that she was in love with Baronet and that he loved her. You've ruined everything for her. She thinks you did it out of spite and greed. She said that you've always wanted to rule after father."
"I kept her alive. Chelazar would have poisoned her again before long, or done something else equally fatal in order to keep Baronet from marrying her."
"She won't believe that, Mykella. She never will."
"You do, don't you?" Salia offered a sad smile.
"I wasn't sure for a long time. I thought you were right, but that was more because I trusted you. Now, people can't lie to you, can they?"
"They can lie all they want, and some still do."
"That's not what I meant. You've changed. Did you know that I danced with that Defoyon Major?"
"No, you didn't mention it."
"He asked a lot of questions about you."
From her one dance with Major Smalltalk, Mykella had no difficulty believing that. "And?"
"He said that no one could deceive you. He also said that such a trait was admirable and useful in a ruler, but for anyone else it led to great pain and chaos. It already has, hasn't it?"
Salia's voice was gentle.
"What else would you have had me do?" "Knowing you, there weren't any other choices."
A hint of bitterness lay behind the words, softly as they had been spoken. Mykella walked toward the wide window that looked out on the front courtyard, still filled with the weak sunlight of a late afternoon in the middle 10 days of spring, scarcely any warmer than winter. Was Salia right? Had all the deaths that she had already created, both directly and indirectly, been unavoidable just because of who she was? How many others would there be?
"You can't stop now,"
Salia said.
"Then all of it will have been for nothing."
Her sister's words brought her up short, with the suggestion that there was still more to do. Of course there was, but... What have you forgotten? Who else was part of Joramil's plots? Abruptly, she stiffened. How could she have forgotten the lizardly Maximpt who had replaced poor Kiedron as the head finance clerk? That reminded her that she needed to have someone track down Kiedron's family and allow them to return to Tempra. She also needed to make sure they received the stipend Kiedron would have received if Joramil had not forced the poor clerk to suicide. As soon as practicable, she needed to talk to Lord Garrick and all the other ministers who had served her father. And what about Tregget, the healer? How much had he known or suspected about the poisonings? She turned back to Salia.
"Have you seen Tregget recently?" "No."
Salia frowned.
Why?
I need to talk to him.
Do you think...
I don't know. I need to find out.
She turned as there was another knock on the study door. She sensed Chalmer outside, along with another man.
Yes?
The private scrivener eased the door open slightly.
Captain Maltor is standing by, Lady Protector. Do you have any orders for him?
I do, if you would have him come in.
Mykella walked from the window back to a position before the carved desk that held so many memories, all centered on her father. Chalmer opened the door wider and gestured to the officer. Maltor was a captain Mykella did not recognize, barely half a head taller than she was, and that meant he was indeed short for an officer, but with broad shoulders and a muscular build. He carried his cap under his arm, and his face was olive-tanned under black hair. He inclined his head respectfully, then straightened, his black eyes alert.
Lady Protector.
Captain, I don't recall seeing you here before.
No, lady. I've just been promoted from under-captain, and I was passing through before taking up a new post with 5th Company in Dekron.
Mykella nodded, then spoke. There are a few other tasks that need to be taken care of. I'd like you to have some men take Maximt into custody. He is the head clerk of the Finance Ministry, and that study is at the far end of the North Corridor on this level of the palace. It should be open, but Chalmer will have a key. I'd also like you to see if someone can locate the healer Tregit so that I might talk to him.
Yes, Lady Protector. Is there anything else?
Not for the moment, Captain. I'm afraid there will be, though.
Maltor nodded, then turned and departed, closing the study door behind him.
Maximt won't be there,
Mykella predicted.
Neither will Tregit.
If either saw what you did on the steps,
said Salia,
they'll be on their way to the Iron Valleys, or taking a boat across the river to Squat Country.
There are others I won't see again either, mused Mykella, and that alone will tell me who else was with Joramil.
Or those who believe you will think that,
pointed out Salia.
That's all too possible. Some of them may even be guilty.
Mykella took a deep breath.
For the moment, will you take over running the palace? I know that's not something...
Salia smiled.
I can do that. Chatelaine Aurelia will be more than glad to tell me if I'm about to make a mistake.
Her smile widened into a brief grin that quickly faded.
Only for a while.
Mykella paused.
In a few days, when the worst settles down, you can...
She stopped. Salia was shaking her head.
Things will settle down. They'll never be the same, though.
You won't ever have to go to Southgate. Ever. Or any place else.
Mykella, sooner or later, I'll have to go somewhere if I want to have a life of my own. We both know that.
Later doesn't mean sooner. If you want to be matched, he will have to meet your approval in person, and mine. You can also have the choice not to choose.
Thank you.
It would be nice to have some choice, or not to be forced into choosing.
What about you? You're going to take the commander, aren't you?
That's possible. I haven't said anything.
He'd be a fool to refuse.
That's why I haven't said anything.
Salia merely nodded, but Mykella could sense a certain amusement behind her sister's pleasant expression. Mykella paused. What else could she say?
Would you mind checking on Rachel on her?
I can do that.
Mykella watched as her youngest sister slipped out of the study.
What if Erase turns out not to care for me?
She didn't think she'd misread his interest, an interest that she had sensed months before. But
what if it's only interest, and not much more?
after she had set Chalmer to drafting the documents promoting Choalt and Erased, Mykella was still pondering over all the difficulties that lay before her when Salia returned more than a half-glass later.
What did she say?
She didn't want to talk to me. She'd bolted the door. I talked to the door, and finally she let me in when I asked if she wanted the entire palace to hear what I had to say. She wasn't happy. She's been crying all the time since the ceremony.
It's all my fault, of course.
Mykella, what you did was necessary, but it is your fault.
So it would have been better for Father's poisoning and Jeraxilt's planned accident to go unnoticed? For Joramil to seize the office of Lord Protector, all so that she could marry Baronet? So that I could be hurried off to Daraka, and you could be matched to the son of a spoiled Seltyr in Southgate?
She thinks she loves him. You killed him. That's all that matters to her now.
Mykella could only shake her head.
"Captain Maeltor, lady,"
announced Chalmer from outside the study door.
"Have him enter."
Maeltor stepped into the study.
"I take it that Maximt has fled,"
said Mykella.
"Yes, lady."
"That's not your fault. I should have sent someone as soon as I finished the investiture. What about the healer?"
"His study is untouched. It's very neat. He's not there. I sent several men to his home, but they have not returned."
"Thank you. For now, I'd appreciate it if you'd stand by in the antechamber until Commander Erased returns."
"Yes, lady."
Once Maeltor had left the study, Mykella turned and studied the desk, as well as the chair behind it. She'd need a higher chair if she were to use the desk, let alone not to appear dwarfed by it. She shook her head.
"What?"
asked Salia.
"So many things to do. Big things, little things."
"You can't do them all at once,"
Salia said, her tone reasonable.
"No, but if I don't do most of them soon, matters will get worse."
"What do you want me to do?"
At that moment, there was another rap on the door.
"Commander Erased, lady,"
announced Chalmer. Salia looked to Mykella.
"He didn't mention Chelazar."
"Have him enter."
Erased stepped into the study. While he'd clearly blotted his face, it was still shiny, and his tunic was damp in places. "The Lady Chelazar has fled Tempra, Lady Protector. My men are attempting to discover which road she may have taken, or whether she fled by the river." Mykella couldn't say she was totally surprised by her aunt's departure. She did have to admire Chelazar's speed of action.
"Commander, if you would come with me."
As she sensed his concern, she added,
"We're only going to the lower levels of the palace."
Salia's eyebrows rose.
"You'd better come as well, Salia,"
added Mykella, absently fingering the pouch at her waist that held the keys to all the locks in the palace, keys she had carried from the day of her mother's death years before. Both Erased and Salia followed her as she walked swiftly from the study to the main staircase, then down and along the west corridor, not quite so far as to the rear door to the gardens, but to a locked door, one that looked like a closet door. It wasn't, but the door to the narrow staircase down to the lowest levels of the palace.
"What's down here?"
asked Salia.
"You know, but you'll see why."
Mykella eased the proper key on the iron ring into the lock, turned it, and opened the door. 3 sets of boots echoed dully down the narrow stairwell to the small foyer at the bottom,
where Mykella paused and glanced at the ancient light torch in the bronze wall bracket before heading through the archway that separated the stair.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?